Welcome in, everybody, to another MLS Monday by Scarves and Spikes. Tyler Pilgrim here alongside Tommy and Sydney. Guys, we have a game to talk about. A big
multiple
one,
games to talk about.
Slightly big, and multiple other much more minor games. But how are y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
My adrenaline hasn't calmed down yet. I'm still in it. I'm still in that watch along.
Tommy, how are you?
I think I'm still hungover. Pretty sure I am.
Still hungover?
A two day hangover from it. It was.
You may have to get that checked out.
No. You just get back into it. That's the secret of it. But
You know the best cure for a hangover?
Not drinking.
Bloody Mary.
Waffling off hash browns.
Oh no. I mean, Waffle House does sound good.
Oh yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. All right, guys, we'll jump straight into it. Let's take care of some stuff real quick. Scarvesandspikes.com. Y'all go check out the website. We got articles. We have some analysis, opinion, everything else in between about this game, about every Atlanta United game. Patreon.com/scarvesandspikes. Go get you in the Discord, get the other benefits. And what else? What am I missing?
The store.
Oh,
Etsy.
As always. Go
it's
get
the link
you-
on scarvesandspikes.com.
Yeah.
T-shirts, hoodies,
Go to the shop.
cups, caps.
We have clothing for
T-shirts.
every version of Atlanta United or Atlanta's weather that you'll run into. So
Maybe all in 1 week.
yeah, get it all at the same time.
Even the Ohio weather.
Hey, y'all had some beautiful weather.
We're in hoodie weather now. It's gross outside.
Get a Scarves and Spikes hoodie.
Yeah.
We need a Scarves and Spikes scarf. That's what we need eventually.
We'll get
Maybe
there.
Makes sense.
something to work on.
I got too many scarves in the background. That's not ours.
All right. So obviously Atlanta United, Inter Miami, Lionel Messi. That's the big game. We're going to talk about that. We're going to be joined very soon by Steve Cangialosi, Apple TV MLS announcer, who called the game and was there for the front row seat for all the chaos. So as we wait on him to get on, there were a couple of other games that did happen to have happened that day. We had two rather boring, I think, 90 minutes and then a wild penalty shootout and then another, kind of more entertaining 90 minutes and then another penalty shootout. But New York City, Cincinnati, Sydney, what you got? What you think of it?
I think let's not bury the lead in that one, by the way. Lucho Acosta, his comments afterwards made it sound like his last season with FC Cincinnati. So we'll probably hit on that with Steve a little bit later on about what's next for Cincinnati after that news. So that's something that they're going to have to talk through. In the offseason. They're also looking to sign a player named Kevin Denkey from Togo. He's a Togo international player, play for Cercle Brugge in the Belgian top division. It's like $50 million to get him for. So pretty.
Won the Golden Boot too, didn't he?
Won the Golden Boot, in Belgium. So pretty lucrative acquisition there for Cincinnati. Looks like they're starting to put the pieces in place for 2025. But the big news is obviously going to be Lucho Acosta. What happens to him? Where he goes from here? What his future is? So that's certainly the big news. Cincinnati, of course, they were on a tough run of form to end the season. Won the first game, really failed to really give a good account of themselves in the second game on the road, and then of course lost in penalties in the third game. Like he said, Tyler, just not the best, most exciting game. Kind of a wild shootout, like you said, but they ultimately move on to take on Red Bulls in the Hudson River Derby, and Steve has called numerous Hudson River Derbies beside the Red Bulls. We'll definitely ask him about that. So, I mean, anyone's guess who wins that series. I mean, I don't know what you guys feel about it, but yeah.
Tommy, what you got?
Pretty
You
intriguing.
can't ignore that there was 5 straight missed penalties.
No,
5
exactly.
straight missed penalties.
Exactly.
Nobody wanted to win that game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that you just don't see, right?
Yeah.
5 straight. And like a couple of them were nice saves and a couple of them were just skying over.
Right.
And that was my, until the Atlanta game, like that was my favorite game of the entire playoffs so far.
Yeah.
Like because penalties are fun to watch if it isn't your team, right? If it's your team, you're standing like I was probably the entire end of that game behind your bar and just screaming at the TV, pacing back and forth, sweating.
Yeah.
Not for this game. I was sitting on my couch with a beer in my hand, cackling so loud that the family heard me upstairs going, "What is going on?" I go,
Yeah.
"This is pure comedy. This is better than any Bill Murray movie that has ever come out."
It was insane.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, nobody would win.
That's the thing. I tweeted that out in the middle because I was like, well, this game's going to be over. We were getting ready, obviously, like slowly for the Atlanta game. And I was like, after like the fourth one, I was like, does anybody actually want to win the Sox game? Like, y'all are like, you can't score in regulation. And then you get to the shootout, and it's like, come on. It's crazy. I called it. Since I said Cincinnati was going to lose, but
yeah, I mean, like I said, there's definitely questions going to be asked for Cincinnati, especially the way how they entered that season, just in dreadful fashion. And again, won the first game at TQL and lost the next two. So, they're not going to clean house or anything like that. But Acosta is the big one. Of course, we talked about Denkey from the Belgian league. So interested to see what Chris Albright does up there in Cincinnati. This is a team that has won the Shield last year. This year lost a step. What does Chris Albright do? What does that technical staff do up there to get them back among the elite of MLS in 2025? Not just 2025, but beyond. So really intriguing storylines coming out of Cincinnati for sure. Not the most intriguing, but we'll talk about Philly in a little bit, but definitely is intriguing to see kind of what is happening up there.
So really quick before we get Steve on here in a couple minutes, the one other game of that, of course we had LAFC and Vancouver. LAFC, I think that was the one that did kind of go the way most people thought it would.
No.
No?
You didn't think so?
I expected domination from LAFC.
Well, okay, fair enough.
LAFC won.
I mean,
yeah, but this is not the LAFC that I feel like has been advertised. There's just games where they look like they are the team that is going to what Miami was supposed to do to Atlanta, right? Yep. 3-4-0 there. And Vancouver, I don't know if they were really in the game. They had a couple opportunities, but really it just felt like LAFC was going to advance. And I haven't seen, knock on wood, in case we get there, I have not seen the LAFC that's been advertised.
And that's something we'll talk about, as they take out Seattle. That is a really strong Seattle defense, probably as good as any in MLS, if not the best altogether. How did they navigate that? How did Seattle kind of neutralize that attack of LAFC? What's up with Olivier Giroud? I mean, they brought him in for so much money. I think we were talking about him last week with Jason Longshore, how that's probably a 2025 signing, but they haven't gotten really much of anything from him this far. Lloris, of course, in goal, so you'll know what you get from him. But yeah, I agree, Tommy. LAFC, what we've seen from them right now isn't what we've seen from them in the regular season. How does Seattle handle that? And how do they continue to neutralize that attack and get themselves a Western Conference final? That's a really good matchup, I think.
And the one that had the most direct results for probably the majority of people listening right now, of course, was Orlando and Charlotte. A little bit of drama at the end, right? They made it interesting. And then it ultimately went to a shootout. I think Duncan McGuire dislocated his shoulder and popped it back in place. So thankfully he didn't have the same result.
Cool.
Yeah. Hey, I like it. But thoughts now that we know that Orlando is the team. What do y'all think, Sydney?
Really intriguing matchup. I mean, it was either going to be against Charlotte, your derby partner right up I-85, or Orlando, who you have a significant history with since you entered MLS. So I don't think fans have any complaints as to who it's going to be. I feel like Charlotte may have been a better preferred matchup for Atlanta United fans, but I mean, you can't complain. You can't be too picky as long as you get to the next stage. And now you have Orlando, who kind of struggled with Charlotte. Maybe weren't to the standard that they expect. We talked about it with Jason last week. This is a team who have really struggled in playoffs. They won the Open Cup a few years ago, yes, but playoffs have kind of been that sore subject for them. and they're looking for MLS Cup, their first MLS Cup in club history. And Pareja hasn't been able to get them there. The players they have haven't been able to get there yet. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure on Orlando in this series.
Tommy,
just to me.
Disrespect. You say the derby in Charlotte, but not the derby in Orlando, and you understand your roots and where you came from.
I feel like Charlotte's more than derby at this. I feel like Charlotte's more than derby at this stage, though.
What has Charlotte really done to have you hate them, right? Like, and obviously there's a huge amount of respect between Charlotte and Atlanta fans, right? There, but Orlando, we've hated them for a very long time,
right?
So now that we talk about energy bars, the energy bar is raising for the hatred. Don't go back to the watch along if you don't know what I'm talking about. The hatred for Orlando's coming back, right? And I feel like all these other teams are popping up. Oh, well, Nashville's our rival. Charlotte's our rival, right?
Yeah.
Let's not forget the OG rival here. It's Orlando. Yep. And we're coming back for you.
Not as much as it was, but we can all agree, it's kind of manufactured to start. But now, it ratchets it up even more now that these two teams are playing each other in the postseason.
I'll say this as we bring Steve in. I understand like there was the big draw, right, with Messi going forward if he did, which he didn't. Haha. I got to say that. But being for real though, anybody that watches MLS, especially if you're a neutral at this point, like these are some really good playoff matches. You have Atlanta, Orlando. That's going to be fireworks. You have the Hudson River Derby, fireworks. Yeah. I really think the only weak link, I guess, if you could consider that out of the entire group at this point is Galaxy, Minnesota. It just seems lopsided. Of course, so did Atlanta and Miami. Yeah. But there's really not a ton of history there, So with that being said, though, we have somebody who has seen many, many more of those games that can come in here and talk about it. Very good friend of the show who's been here plenty of times, Mr. Steve Cangialosi. What's going on, buddy?
Well, you start this by dating me, don't you? I've seen many, 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 many of these since 1996. No, you're right. I think all four matchups that we've got in the conference semifinals are fascinating, and probably each one for different reasons. But one of the great things about the round that we're about to embark on is the rivalry aspect of this, right? I mean, obviously, the one in the Deep South is the one that I know you're most closely connected to. There's a New York derby that's going to take place. And if form holds in the Western Conference, it could be LA. I'm not going to put the cart before the horse, but, this game is all about passion, and the passion amongst the fans is most intense when you get these kind of matchups. This is going to be a very fun couple of weeks.
Speaking of passion, I think Tommy had something he wanted to say before we shared. We did some show and tell really quick, but Tommy, okay. you had something that you wanted to say in relation to the NHL.
Sure. Well, Steve, you're a big hockey guy. I know. We've talked hockey when you've been on here before, and I went back and watched the video we're about to play for you, and we're all just screaming at the TV to blow the whistle, and it went back and reminded me of the end or the end of the game, or you could say movie if you didn't get to watch it live. Miracle, right? You're just watching that clock go, and you're just clear it. So that's why, Tyler, I'm renaming MLS Monday to Miracle Monday, because there was a lot there. But I went back and watched Miracle yesterday because the hangover was legit yesterday after that game. And I decided, let's go back and watch Miracle because it feels like those kind of vibes. So
why not?
If you want to play the video here, this is exactly how the end of Miracle happened.
Here we go.
Let's go. Finish it.
Blow the whistle.
Yes.
Clear it.
Send it. Let's go. Blow the whistle, Lucas. Blow the whistle. Let's go.
Oh my gosh.
Let's go.
Oh my gosh.
No, I get it. And honestly, I hope that thing goes viral because that's what the fan bases around this league should be feeling in moments like that. I bet you guys didn't think you'd be having this type of show And maybe if you did, well, you're clairvoyant or you knew something that the rest of the world did not. I thought a lot about the event and what it must mean to certain people in that room. And in my preparation for the game, I'm looking at what people are saying publicly and maybe what they're telling us a little bit behind the scenes. And Tata Martino, as he brought into Miami into the fold in this decisive game 3, spoke about his players. And he put it in this context. We have guys in this room who've been in far more pressure situations than this. And that's true. And it could be a very beneficial thing in that moment for players like Messi and Busquets, who came off the bench, and Jordi Alba and Luis Suarez. But the contrast to what I felt when all the dust settled on Monday night is that I looked back at it and I said to myself, you know something? I think there were many more players on Miami, on Atlanta United, who looked at that as maybe some of the most important 90 minutes of their life. Yeah. And that carried through, I think, with a lot of the heroic defending that we saw. And you start any conversation about how they did this with what Brad Guzan did on that night and in this series. But it went well beyond that. Dax McCarty played 58 minutes like it was the most important game he ever played. And when you get that replicated throughout the roster, that can carry you a long way, and it did.
So as you and Danny were preparing to call the game and getting a feel for the atmosphere at Chase Stadium down there in Fort Lauderdale, and even throughout the game, even after the game, what's that kind of like experiencing, it from the commentary gantry? What the reaction from fans were? What the reaction from supporters were? Just what's the overall atmosphere, especially when the final whistle blew?
You're putting it into perspective, I think, the best way you can. And I tried to capture that at the end of the game, Sydney. I think we watched two major things here in that moment. As Atlanta United survives that last corner and then gets the ball out to midfield and it's over, you're processing quickly that, A, you probably just witnessed the biggest upset in MLS history. But more than that, you have to relate it to the fans in Atlanta. What did we just see? We saw a team that gave up a Thiago Almada, that sold Yorgos Giakoumakis, that made a hard decision to fire a really good man in Gonzalo Pineda after it went bad in midseason. And then you're in this moment where, holy smokes, this was all supposed to be over in the penultimate game of the regular season. And now you're entering this next level conference semifinal where the tournament in that part of the bracket is wide open. You can make a case now, I think, a good educated case for any of the four teams that are remaining in the Eastern Conference. To your question about what we felt as we arrived at the stadium and during the match and in the aftermath of the match, it was set up for Inter Miami. It was set up for them. And I know the history, the difficult history they've had with Atlanta United this season. To see that there were 3 games that Lionel Messi would play 90 minutes in this year and lose 3, and all 3 were against Atlanta United. Hey, that's more than just a coincidence. We know that. But I got the feeling as I arrived, truth be told, it's Miami's night. But when you have a Luis Suarez with 3 bona fide goal-scoring opportunities who doesn't bury any of them, the player who scored 91 seconds into this series, that's a big, big thing to overcome.
So kind of, I guess, to expound upon that, with Miami being, if you look at the points, the best team in MLS history, right? If that's the gauge. Milan asked a question. He had asked this in our Discord earlier, and we can talk about it all day. But somebody who's seen so many games, called so many games, especially this year, but over the years in general, and I won't put it up because I don't want to cover your face. But he was saying, the competitive level in MLS as a whole. Do you feel as if it has been understated in other parts of the world now that the world had eyes on Major League Soccer?
I think the Tam and Gam era, of which I can't tell if we're at the tail end of, the middle of, or still relatively early, has done amazing things to elevate the level of play in the league. I think if you go back and look, let's leave 1996 out of it because that's part of the history of this league that was skewed. It was massive on so many levels. The crowds were good, but the game is so much better now, I feel. The league is so much better now, I feel, than it was 15 to 20 years ago. And we talk about the big acquisitions in this league so much, and rightfully so, when you have a Lionel Messi, who is the extreme of this. But even prior to that, Thierry Henry coming here, Zlatan coming here, those are polarizing figures and great players. But it's interesting. I think the massive number of players who've been signed to those $700,000, $800,000 per year contract, those TAM and GAM guys across the board, many of them, by the way, from South America, which has been the biggest place exporting talent to Major League Soccer, in my opinion, that relates to the question that you asked. That's really the key to this. And, I'm always of the opinion that a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think the level of play now is very much superior to what it was 12 to 15 years ago in this league. And that's why I think, by the way, the teams that are on the back end spending, they're going to have a hard time moving forward. And I don't think that has anything to do with the $20 million player, a fourth DP coming in. I'm just talking about talent across the board. You can't do this on a shoestring budget anymore. I think those days are over.
So I have a question. I had a question assigned to me to ask you, but I'm going to go off a little bit. I'm going to stick with hockey. Give me your thoughts on the hockey scrum inside the net with Brad Guzan, Suarez, and gang.
Well, look, retrospectively, I think Campana should have gotten a yellow. The Suarez thing was, he's obviously looking to incite something at that point, but it was almost an extension of what happened back in the first half when the two wound up smiling and shrugging it off and we play on. So I think Campana justifiably could have been carded. I was caught up in the moment because at that point, you really have to have your antenna up to make sure that no one on either side is about to do something that they're going to regret. Guzan's been around a long time. He's been in a lot of competitive battles on each side of the Atlantic. I never once thought he would lose it to the point where he did something very unadvisable to get himself sent off or do anything that would jeopardize his team. But in that moment, it's really heated. And you've got a player who's part of that mix, Luis Suarez, who's been involved in, let's just say, some of the more infamous moments in global soccer. I think you guys shaking your heads know exactly where I'm going with that. I don't think he's about to chomp anyone in what is essentially a 2-2 game with about 20 minutes remaining. But that element of character is there, though. And honestly, at that point, the game now hits this amazing level, right? We just saw 5'7" Lionel Messi win a header in the box. You know what that play reminded me of, guys? I'll tell you this. It's kind of a footnote from my days calling the Red Bulls on MSG. And it relates to your team now because it has to do with Dax McCarty. Ask Dax McCarty what the most memorable goal of his career was. And it was against Real Salt Lake. It was Red Bull Arena. It was a 3-3 game. And Dax, who, like Messi, is 5'0", scores one of the most courageous headers any player is going to, surrounded by three defenders, buries it, and the Red Bulls win on a last-minute goal. So the greatest player of all time is doing that. And that scrum, as you alluded to, is the residue of that moment. I hope people enjoyed the broadcast on Saturday night. Obviously, Atlanta fans loved it. But I'll say this. The goal by Bartosz Slisz, and I watched a lot of the game back when I finally got home from South Florida yesterday. It's an uneven call by me as a play-by-play announcer, truth be told, because if you listen to the call, there's like half a second of hesitation about what I just saw. You've got Aviles on the ground. You've got the body language of the Miami players, which speaks to just stopping in the moment, which you're taught never to do. And for that split second in my brain, I'm processing, wait a minute, is this real? Is it going to count? Did a whistle blow and I didn't hear it? Is there a signal that I missed? Because you're trying to see 22 players on the field at once. And suddenly you realize, good goal, it counts. And it's off the head of a guy who scored once in his MLS career prior to that moment. So you're processing a lot there. And that turns out to be, I think we can talk about it now or in retrospect 10 years from now, one of the biggest goals in this club's history. Because think about the platform, guys. Messi's final game of the season, an elimination game, global audience. And that's what I think a lot of the players on Atlanta never really forgot, this platform and being able to show their best in that game, which they largely did.
And quickly, I'll add on Slish, and Tyler can back me up on this. After the Leagues Cup match against DC United in July, he missed the penalty, or the penalty was saved by Alex Bono. We had a chance to talk to him afterwards, and he was just absolutely devastated after getting that penalty saved. And he said, exact quote, "I effed up." And to see him score that goal was just fantastic vindication for him. In this season, it's been a season of lows for him. Really from the lowest of lows in July to the highest of highs on Saturday, and it was really good to see him rewarded for that.
Yeah, and they've done this in a very collective manner, have they not? They've scored 7 goals in this postseason, and they have goals from 6 different players. That's the way it has to be. I will say this, moving forward, I don't know if they can do this with Brad Guzan having to make 8 saves in a game, which he's done twice in this series. The opening loss to Miami, and of course the clinching win yesterday. I think that the recipe will probably have to be a little bit different, although it does help to have your leader and your captain playing at the level that he is now. What came back to me a few times in the course of calling this game was something Gonzalo Pineda said to us very early in the season. Where was Atlanta on the opening day of the season, guys? Do you guys remember? It was Columbus, right?
Yep, it was there. It was very cold.
They opened up in the house of the reigning champions. And I remember Danny and I called that game. And we remember the coaches' session with Pineda in advance of the start of the season. And he talked about Guzan in a very unique way. And you've probably heard this line by now. And there was debate at the time whether it would be Guzan or Cohen starting the season as the number 1. And he went out of his way to say whether or not he's on the field, whether or not he has the armband on, he is the undisputed captain of our team. And part of me is processing that as just coach speak a little bit, but that turned out to be real. He winds up playing Brad 32 of the 34 games in the season. There was that one opportunity for Cohen to come in after the suspension to Guzan, and it opened the door for a couple of starts after that. But it was very quickly realized he's in so many ways the heartbeat of what Atlanta United soccer is all about. And sink or swim, there's a reason we're going to have to do this with him between the sticks. I dropped a line late in the broadcast. I don't even know if you guys heard it, but he keeps in touch with his former World Cup teammate, Tim Howard. He was his understudy in 2010, 2014. And he said he'll get an occasional text from Tim Howard along the lines of, what the heck are you still doing playing? And I think we got our answer over these last 3 games.
Yeah, 100%. So really random fun fact. There's I think it's a promo with, I think it's Captain Morgan maybe. And this kind of went under the radar. It was like a month ago when it popped up, but it was Brad Guzan, Tim Howard, and Dax McCarty on a boat in Lake Lanier down here in Georgia, sipping on drinks. And I don't even remember what it was about other than like, I guess Captain Morgan and something, but seeing them too, because they're very similar personalities. They're I think some people may, if you were to see them from afar, you'd think, oh, they're a little abrasive, but that's just a goalkeeper. Right. But I could totally see Tim Howard sending some stuff like that, but that's been the big question. Like, what are you still doing here? And Brad comes up with this, not just the series. I mean, go back to decision day, and I was down in Orlando, and Derek Williams actually referred to, the first time I've ever heard this, referred to Brad Guzan as Mr. Atlanta United for everything that he does behind the scenes, for everything that fans don't see. He won't give up, and he's not going to give up until somebody makes him. And that's
I think he loves his job, and that's why, regardless of what happens, I think he comes back next year. Look, I could be wrong about that. You know, you're going to have some time to try to process what's best for your future, but I don't think it's over for him at this point. I'll never forget a conversation I had with Phil Simms, the former Giants quarterback, a long time ago. He said, players in all sports hear this from fans, know when it's time to say goodbye, to which he responded, that's nonsense. Because the one thing you have to understand, life after playing, it's not nearly as good as when you are playing. Yeah. And if you're smart, you realize that. And when I say he loves his job, I think he loves every element of it. I don't think he's ever said no to a pregame interview when it's been requested. And when he does them, he is insightful. He is polite. He actually loves the process of doing it. You don't get that in every circle. Doesn't mean the guys who don't function that way are bad guys. That's not my part of it. But as it relates to Brad, I think he loves the game. I think he loves the training. I think he loves talking the game with people like myself and, of course, people in soccer operations. This doesn't have to end for him right now. And I'd be surprised if that's not the decision, if he doesn't land on saying at least one more time, regardless of where this goes.
And they have the option. So, and I think at this point, it's one of those where you kind of be kind of wild to not pick up that option at this point, considering the intangibles, right? Like,
and I think the decision is, does Brad want this? That's what I think this is. You know, Brad, are you all in? Are you ready? And then, you know, if the answer to that is yes, I believe that's a slam dunk.
Yeah. So this is, you know, normally you're on our Wednesday normal full Atlanta United show. We started doing kind of an overall MLS thing, you know, within the past couple months. So it just so happened that Atlanta Miami was the big game of the weekend, but other games did happen. Other news has happened. I think one of the other kind of big news moments of the week came with Philadelphia and Jim Curtin getting fired. So y'all have called numerous ones. You've had a lot of history with Jim Curtin. What are your kind of just initial thoughts about the whole situation?
I was floored when I found out that this was happening. Jim's going to work again when he wants to work again. I think he's that widely respected. But there was a vision that he had that I think was conflicting with how Ernst Tanner, the sporting director, wanted to proceed. Jim was coach of the year 2022, the same year that Ernst Tanner was sporting executive of the year. But I think even then, each one had a different vision of how they should proceed. Jim Curtin's next job, I think, will come for a team that tells him in advance, this is what you could look forward to in terms of resources acquiring players, because he didn't have that in Philadelphia. And one of the reasons that they kept the old guard as long as they did was a reluctance to go out and spend big money on the superstar to come in. So if you have that mentality, and you're in the process of selling players like Jose Martinez and Julian Carranza, it's tough really to march forward with those conflicting philosophies, especially for a team that was a few seconds away from winning MLS Cup in 2022, as they were before Gareth Bale's famous tying goal. Could I see Jim in Atlanta? Possibly. Could I see Jim in a place down the road like Chicago or St. Louis? Possibly. It's Berhalter's job now, but he played and had a relationship with the Fire, and he's well respected in that city. He could work in a U.S. soccer circle at some point. So all of this remains to be seen. Now, we're a few minutes into the conversation here, and we haven't addressed the elephant in the room, and that's Rob Valentino, which you may or may not have spoken about as you started the show. It's going to be, I think, a very interesting call. But what I'm seeing a lot of on social media circles is, how do you not give Rob Valentino the shot to come back next year? We're not there yet, in my opinion. We're not there yet. Now, if he takes this team to MLS Cup, that's where I think it gets real interesting if his team finds its way in a final. And I'm only saying it for this reason. Number one, the overriding factor in Atlanta winning this series was a heroic performance by the goalkeeper, okay? And that kind of conflicts with the contribution of the coach. Now, let me be very clear. Rob Valentino has done not a good job, a tremendous job of bringing this group together for some of the most memorable nights Atlanta soccer will know. But I don't think Garth Lagerwey is a prisoner of the moment. And I think that's the biggest point here. If he truly processes this and believes that Rob Valentino is the best course moving forward, we're going to see that. But there's a big difference between what we're seeing now and what happened in 2016 when he took an interim coach in Brian Schmetzer and wound up rehiring him after they won MLS Cup. Seattle went into those playoffs as one of the hottest teams in MLS. This is a team that got it together 2 weeks prior to the playoffs starting in what has been a fantastic run. So I think the difference between what we're seeing now and in 2016 are starkly different. I think Valentino, if he continues this for another game or two, I think then that conversation becomes very real.
100%, because at the time, going into this week or last week, it was Vieira, Valentino, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either way, your coach was going to start with the letter V. And then all of a sudden, Curtin, you hear about the release of Jim Curtin, and Atlanta fans are all of a sudden, you add this name in there, and now you don't know what to do. And then you end up winning this game now as well in Miami, and the fans have no idea what to do. Now, from the Atlanta fan base, most people aren't Jim Curtin fans, not because of how the style of what he does, because of the comments that he made about Atlanta last year.
Yeah, understood.
And he would have to apologize there, obviously, to the fans if that comes in. But obviously, Atlanta has been interested, right? There was a story that came out a couple of weeks ago saying that Atlanta tried to interview him. This decision, no matter, I think, what happens after this season, the fan base is going to be very vocal on the decision.
Jim's going to work, and Jim wants to work. And I think one of the reasons that Jim might have pushed that away is that he's a Philadelphia guy. Okay, he went to Villanova. He's from Orland, Pennsylvania. His kids are in school, and I don't know that he's ready for a move like that at the time that exchange happened. Now, of course, the situation is starkly different. If he's going to work again as an MLS coach, it's going to happen in a market other than Philadelphia. Could that be revisited? I guess it could. You've made a couple of hockey references already, my friend. Don't ever forget this. Brian Trache once coached the New York Rangers, okay? So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And honestly, I think Jim would win a lot of people over there if he steps into the job and starts winning. That generally solves everything. That's one of the basic lessons I've learned. And I think that comment, look, you guys are more in tune with this than I am. That comment was more about the Benz being a palace and we play in this less palatial environment, as I recall it happening. And his comment was, everybody, please just be quiet about it. And he was right. It's a much smaller stadium that's going to undergo some renovations, I understand, in this offseason as well. But I don't know that the search won't be much more broad than that, too. You'd carry some hard feelings, though, I can tell by your reaction.
Well, I think it was more of a shot at the fans, saying that this is more of a party and you got to check their IDs. They're not coming here. The fans are coming here for soccer. They're more just coming here to party. And by the way, Jim Curtin, I can multitask, all right? I can party and watch soccer at the same time, okay? Many people can multitask.
Fair enough.
I think it's St. Louis. I'll just throw this out there, Sydney. You jump to the next question. My opinion, I think with all things considered as it stands right now on November 11th, St. Louis seems to be the best fit, I think, for what he does and probably what he wants out of a club. Now, of course, he wants resources, right? Atlanta's going to be a great one for that. but I think St. Louis is already partially pre-built in a way that would benefit his play style.
Yeah, and the other
my
thing is this, if for any reason it's not a fit, this goes back to the conversation about this league being more competitive, I believe anyway, than it's ever been. Jobs inevitably open up as well, right? There were 9 or 10 last year. The final count was 6 this year. So if something doesn't feel right about the opportunities that may or may not exist now, he doesn't have to say yes to them. I think there are very few people who are in that group who can approach those openings with that kind of an open mind, because they're 99% sure it's not the last time an opportunity is going to come their way.
But now, shifting back to Philadelphia, where did the Union go from here? You wonder how tough of a sell that will be now that there's kind of word that, Jay Sugarman doesn't really want to spend too much money on making the team better. And that's the assertion, that's the feeling that some fans have gotten. I'm sure some candidates for the job will get as they kind of consider, hey, do I want to move to Philadelphia? Do I want to take the helm of this team?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a lot of expectation, because Ernst Steiner said, we kind of stagnated, and whoever is next in that job is going to have massive expectations on getting that team to the next level. So I guess who kind of makes sense for that role for the Union team?
It's so hard to apply for that job and know what you're walking into, because once you say, Jim Curtin, it's over, what's the fallout from that? Ali Bedoya is insisting he's playing again next year. He's out of contract. What are the chances of him coming back to Philadelphia now with the coach who he's had a marvelous relationship with for a long time no longer being part? Now, you might not think that's a big deal as a player who's 36 years old, I believe, exits the organization. But you're talking about someone who's, I'll use the same phrase I used for Dax, kind of the heartbeat of that team. Is Kai Wagner going to be happy moving forward? You can easily see a situation where he says, obviously, you're moving on from the old guard, the old nucleus. I'm still part of that. Move on from me as well. You don't know which way this is going to go. Is it the most attractive job in MLS right now? No, but it can be. Let's not forget, Philadelphia is still a major market. They're going to make some improvements to the stadium, I imagine. And Tanner, for all of the things that people construe as faults, did a very good job putting that team together without spending a lot of money. There is value in what he brings to that position, even though I disagree with cutting loose Jim Curtin.
Yeah. Well, and let's face it here. Philadelphia fans are rough, okay? All the sports, I mean, Flyers, we're going to keep going with the hockey stuff, right? Flyers, Eagles, I've dealt with their fans before at games. They're energetic. We'll just say that in a nice term. And they're not happy with the Curtin firing, right? Most of you go and you look at that tweet and you go there, see the responses back. It was not positive news for most of their fans. So whoever's going in there, if they struggle early on, right? Like, he got more out of that roster than probably some would. And even if they continue to struggle, that's going to be a rough start for any manager coming in there.
Yeah, and this was a quick fall for that team, too. I mean, they still came into this season considered, put them down in ink for a playoff spot at the very least. And even going into that final game on decision day at home with fate in their own hands eventually as the day goes on, to play the kind of game that they played, that was pretty disappointing on decision day as it fell apart for them. But again, I don't want to make this too much about the Philadelphia Union, but there was, I think, a window that existed for them, and that window now is closed and has to be reopened by the right people.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, they always felt like they were just like this close to doing it all. And, it's tough especially for an owner. Like, I don't want to ever be in that position where you have to decide, like, well, can they make it over the finish line, or is it just going to be a downhill spiral from this point? It's a very fine line, and it's tough to judge for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, seconds away from MLS Cup in 2022, and to have it end the way it did, it's a tough thing to regroup on. And they've got some decisions to make too. Jack Elliott's out of contract. There's an option there, but I understand it's a pretty lucrative one. Do they pick that up? Do they try to make a settlement with him, meet somewhere in the middle? Jacob Glesnes did not have his best season, and he's not getting any younger either. So you could see a remaking of most of the team moving forward.
For sure. So jump into another one that you are very familiar with, bread and butter, in fact. We have a Hudson River Derby coming up.
Yeah.
And I guess starting because look, Rebels, it felt like was the only team that handled business when they needed to in this first set of games. But New York City, Cincinnati, it was I think one of the many upsets that happened, but they have a rather boring game, admittedly, and then they have a wild penalty shootout. What kind of stood out to you in that series, and especially that shootout?
I still have to watch all the video from the series, and I just found out today I'm going to call the New York Derby playoff game on the weekend of the 23rd. What's interesting is that the Red Bulls have never played at Citi Field. Okay, they've never been in the place, so they're going to have to familiarize themselves with exactly, what that experience will entail. They've played on the postage stamp at Yankee Stadium. Maybe they'll think it's similar to that or not. New York City, I thought, was a team, and this is a compliment, that underachieved largely this year, because I thought they had the talent to be more than what they were in the end, which was the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. There was an unevenness about Cincinnati throughout the entire year. And it turns out you go 34 games and then 3 playoff games without ever quite figuring it out. Some of it is bad luck. You can't lose Matt Miazga, your best communicator on the team, for the majority of the season and be what you were. Cheeto Awaziem was a nice pickup, but they were better with Matt Miazga. And Awaziem had some rough moments down the stretch. And I think if you go an entire year without figuring out what your striker is supposed to be, then that's a really tough thing to overcome. Towards the end, you're playing Yuya Kubo, a Swiss Army knife who can play any position, and he happened to be very good at forward. And you're playing Luca Ortegiano up top, who was brought here to be a wingback. You're really thinking outside the box to compete at the best level, which is fine, which can work sometimes. But you're not going to, I don't think you're really going to go deep, or at least be favored to go deep without a true striker. It was one of the enlightening things about seeing Tayare score twice in the clinching win the other night. New York City, I think, will justifiably be a slight favorite in that series against Red Bull. But this is a different team from the one they hammered a couple of weeks ago at Red Bull Arena. New York City walked in, scored twice in the opening minutes, wound up rolling to a 5-1 victory that night. And that was the night at Red Bull Arena. A lot of the fans just were tired. Do better. There were signs held up in the stadium that were not very flattering. But I also think this is the first time it's come together for the Red Bulls, having Morgan, Forsberg, and Dante Van Zyre playing together, and each one of them playing at what I think is a high level. Emil Forsberg, we forgot about it for much of the year because he was hurt and the team wasn't winning a lot, but we've been reminded now in the last couple of weeks, this is a hell of a player. And most of the time when he's on the field, he is the best passer of the ball. I'm excited for that game because I think we're going to see high-level soccer with high stakes, of course, a chance to get to a conference final. The Red Bulls still have a chance to host a conference final, by the way, even as a number 7 seed. That's obviously if Atlanta takes care of business and the Red Bulls also on the road take care of business. But I love Alonso Martinez as a player. I think he's someone who's really brought the best out in his game over the last couple of weeks. I don't want to say it would not surprise me if this was decided by penalties, guys, on November 23rd. And think about that. Carlos Coronel and Matt Freese have each had amazing moments in penalty shootouts on the road to get this far.
Yeah, and I feel like you say Hudson River Derby. I feel like that's all you need to say, but there's just so much intrigue. You mentioned Red Bulls getting healthy at the right time. Two terrific goalkeepers, Freeze up for goalkeeper of the year. I think Kalina will win it, but up for goalkeeper of the year.
Kalina will win it. He will.
Yeah. But just tremendous job in the penalty shootout the other day. So I want to kind of switch over to Cincinnati. You mentioned them briefly about their striker situation. Bupensa, of course, was a disaster. They brought Kevin Kelsey in to mix results. According to Tom Bogert, they're looking to sign, or the verge of signing Kevin Denkey from the Belgian Pro League, won the Golden Boot in that league last year. Then you get the news that might be Lucho Acosta's last match with Cincinnati. So they have a lot of questions going in to the off season. And that's going to be very intriguing. We mentioned it before you came on, what Chris Albright does to get this team back among the elite in MLS.
Okay, can I just say something about the Lucho remark, and then I'll try to tie up a better answer to your big question here. Let's not take to the bank comments players make in the immediate moments after difficult loss, okay? Lionel Messi quit the Argentine national team after the Copa America Centenario final back in 2016. Okay,
y'all know what happened next.
All right. There's kind of, look, players speak. They're responsible for what exactly they're communicating. I'll get it, but I would really recommend revisiting this with Lucho Acosta at a more appropriate time, when he's had time to process the season, time to process where he is at this point in his career. He's got a chance to win MVP again. I don't think he will. Was he a finalist, guys? Did I miss that? There were 5 finalists, and now off the top of my head, I can't remember if he was one.
I want to say yes, but
I think so. I think he was still up there.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think most folks said he, kind of thought like you're great. You did it last year, but you're not quite there this year.
My point is, in the conversation until the very end of the season, to win the award and be the first guy to win the award in back-to-back seasons. They need to figure something out. But I think I stumbled into the conversation you guys were having just before you brought me on. Chris Albright has a sensible budget to do that, and I think they've got the brain power to make good choices. They've kind of missed on one or two, and I'm not even ready to say they missed on Kevin Kelsey. He's still such a young player. Right. There might be something in there moving forward. The question is, do they have the patience to find out? Because as you take it back to Lucho, their time is now. Lucho Acosta is not going to be any better than he is right now. You hope he plays at this level for another 2 or 3 years, but he's not elevating his game from this point forward. He's delivered so much already. And to go back to the big picture here, Sydney, I think in a moment of honesty, Pat Noonan will tell you too much of what we did relied on him this season. Look at I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but look at the ratio of goals that were scored with Lucho having a goal contribution and the ratio of goals that were scored without him. It's really standout stuff. I'd let him cool off a little bit more before we take that seriously.
So the series the game that I'm most interested besides the Atlanta is LAFC in Seattle. And before you jumped on, I said, LAFC, it was expected that they were going to beat Vancouver, but I expected them to beat them, right? And the high-flying offense, really haven't seen that here. And Seattle's obviously the defensive team, right? They have not allowed 2 goals in a game since the middle of September. Defense wins championships.
Yep.
That's what they say in all sports. I'm interested to see what happens in this game. I don't know how to call it at all.
I would say this. Seattle has had a really difficult time, though, with LAFC, and the game is going to be played on their ground. I'm interested to see the physical status going into that game of a Jordan Morris, which I think would be a big factor, missing him, or if he's truly something close to 100%, I think that makes a really big difference. Let's not forget how LAFC got to an MLS Cup last year. They were kind of the team that was locking it down at the moment then. Now, Steve Cherundolo, I think, had a really interesting way to navigate the playoffs in the Western Conference last year. Danny and I were fortunate enough to call the Western Conference final on MLS Season Pass last year, and it was mission accomplished for LAFC. They won a 2-0 game over Houston, but it was largely unentertaining stuff for 90 minutes. And sometimes that pragmatic way has to be the way. Give Brian Schmetzer 2 weeks to come up with a game plan. I generally think that's something good. That would not be one where I fall off my chair. And just to go back to the game that you guys were cheering Atlanta on Saturday night, the possibility of Miami LAFC went out the window with that Inter Miami defeat. Imagine if it was Inter Miami LAFC in the final, how much the narrative becomes Hugo Lloris, Olivier Giroud against the man who denied them a World Cup championship in 2022. Now that part of the storyline is out, but I said it at the top when you brought me on. I think all 4 of these games are fascinating in their own way.
Well, you're welcome, MLS.
Yeah,
right.
And we've thrown a wrench in it. We'll jump because I know you're here longer than I think maybe you expected.
okay.
The last one is, and I said it earlier, to me it's the least intriguing, and that's not a knock on it at all. I think there's just so many other storylines. LA Galaxy, Minnesota. LA Galaxy, in my opinion, is the most well-rounded team in MLS this year. Columbus Crew was right there up until they weren't. And then Minnesota is kind of in that Atlanta situation where it kind of feels like they've snuck in a little bit, and now they're up against, the big time. What do you kind of make of this particular match?
I can watch the Galaxy play all day. They're that fun and entertaining. So that's, selfishly, that's how I view them. It's a long layoff for all of the teams that swept, and Ricky Puig himself kind of brought this to the dialogue when he said, come on, MLS, a 3-week break, do better, something along those lines. Nobody's going to fix that problem for you, Ricky, but we've seen examples of this really get teams stale. New England Revolution set a points record in 2021. They had to wait 23 days to play their first playoff game against New York City, which they lost on penalties. Now, it's been an equally long wait for Minnesota, which unexpectedly swept its series as well. I would say this: if suddenly for one night it's the gang that can't shoot straight for LA, and somehow they get this to penalties, I think they feel really good about being in that place with Dane St. Clair. And so many of the teams that advanced to this round of 8 got there via at least one penalty shootout. It's your guys who were the exception to the rule, winning a pair of 1-goal games in regulation. LA Galaxy should be a prohibitive favorite. I think the real interesting thing is, would they still be favored having to play a game at BMO Stadium on the road if that LA conference final was to materialize? Because I think you could still make a case for that, even with them being on the road for that conference final. So to get to your point, yeah, they're that good.
And just quickly on LA, it's just amazing what one transfer window can do. I mean, Peck, Paintsel, Puig, who has been here for a couple of years now, they added, just those tremendous pieces to that team. Royce, of course, as well, but this team is just night and day compared to last year. And the prospect of an El Trafico final for the right to play in MLS Cup is very intriguing. But as he said, if those guys aren't clicking just for one night, that could go out the window. So I'm really interested to see what they do, if they can kick things into another gear against Minnesota and maybe advance.
Always root for the best story, Sydney. That's kind of what that's my mindset as a commentator. Okay. And that's why I've been hearing all this nonsense in the past couple of days of, oh, what a tragedy for MLS that Messi is out and Apple. Oh, guys, there is a very fascinating story building in Atlanta right now. Okay. as an announcer, you want that. You you embrace that. You have a 40-year-old at the tail end of his career. You have a Dax McCarty who's never won MLS Cup in a 19-year career. He's only been to one final. We know what the Messi effect is globally, but if you take 2 seconds to process the rest, there's a heck of a lot out there that is compelling. This is not 2002 anymore. This league has come a long way. And honestly, it kind of sets the drama for next season even more, because that would be Messi's last year under contract. And as they go into the playoffs next year, that dialogue of they can't fail again, that's a good thing for MLS. It's not a bad thing.
So what you're saying is you don't have an email to share with us, because I was going to ask you if you had the email from Tim Cook and Don Garber canceling the season. I was going to ask you if you could share it with us. Just read it out loud.
No. No such thing exists. It's all good, guys. It's all good.
Wraps.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. No matter what happens from now until MLS Cup, the first matchup between Atlanta and Inter Miami next year is must-watch television. I don't care who you are.
Of course, and that's why we do this. It's the next time that Guzan and Luis Suarez is not signed for next year, but from what I understand, loves Miami, loves the situation, might want to come back and play with the buddies at least one more season. Imagine that first face-to-face encounter with Brad Guzan, and whether or not Leo Campana is there, throw that on for good measure as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Steve, we truly, truly appreciate it, as always.
Oh, I appreciate you guys. Yeah. Always do.
Hanging for too long.
Enjoy Sunday afternoon. I'm going to be glued to my set as well. Okay, guys?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Good to talk as always.
See you later.
See you.
Good stuff, as always, from Steve Cangialosi. I thought he had a great call, and I wanted to touch on it. I didn't want to keep him any longer going through all the matches, but he made a comment that kind of stood out to me about the Atlanta match that I talked to the folks over at Mundial magazine, which has an article coming out tomorrow, by the way, that we'll be a part of. But we kind of got into the conversation about like that third goal, right? Like it's this big moment, one of the biggest moments in Atlanta United's history. Yeah. And I mean, Steve even said it, like you're kind of confused at how to react. Like we're on the watch along.
Yeah.
Like,
did they score? Why are they showing the crowd?
Yeah,
why are they showing the bench?
Watch it too. Pedro Amador, he sends in the cross. And if you didn't know any better, you would think Pedro Amador has the biggest brass set ever, because he sends in this cross and then turns around and just walks off. Like he has like explosions behind him.
Curry.
Yeah. And it's like, what? But it was because nobody knew what was going on.
Yeah.
But I thought Steve did a great job regardless. I thought it was a phenomenal call.
Yeah. To everyone complaining about that, I mean, Lucas Spalla, of course, was the referee on Saturday. It's his prerogative whether he wants to blow the whistle or not. But I mean, you got to keep playing. You can't stop. Yeah. You don't stop until you hear that whistle. And sure, Miami fans will maybe feel hard done by that goal, but Spalla is well within his right to.
Shouldn't have pushed Brad.
Yeah.
On
that note, I agree with Steve. Campana's very fortunate he didn't get carded for that or booked for that. So, but yeah, terrific match. Atlanta, of course, moving on. And yeah, all bets are off, as Steve said, in the East especially.
Really hoping he was going to share that email with us. I just wanted to see
memo.
How many swear words and exclamation marks, question marks. Can we cancel the rest of the season? Like, is that okay?
I'm glad you figured out who Tim Cook is, by the way.
Well, that's another reference to people. You got to keep the things going long term, right? So people connect it together. Like, oh, like when you watch like Marvel like shows, and you're like, oh, that goes back to like episode 3 of Loki. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're tying them all in, right? Energy bar, which I'm gonna bring up because you see Sydney going, oh, please don't talk about the energy bar. Please don't talk about the energy bar. It was full, Danny.
Hey, Stars Pike has his own multiverse at this point.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
we have
exactly.
throwbacks. I also
real quick, we'll do it again on Wednesday. But thanks to the battered herons and all of them for 2.5 weeks or whatever it was, of just fun. Us, Henry, hopping on.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got to play Miami, not only because we won and we pulled off a big upset, but we got to hang out with our buddies.
Yeah.
For a few weeks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great night.
It was a fun time.
Great
And
night.
fair play to them, as we said that night. And not to keep putting Danny in, in the spotlight, but I'm just saying.
Come on, guys. Go
Let's
again.
go. Let's go.
Look at that face.
Blow the whistle. Blow the whistle. Clear it.
Send it. Let's go. Blow the whistle, Lucas. Blow the whistle. Let's go.
Oh my god.
I had the biggest watch party in Ohio. I'm just saying. If there was a bigger watch party
I don't
than that,
dispute that.
you should come to Brunswick, Ohio, and you can come hang out with us because this basement was rocking.
I don't dispute that.
Yep. No, we love you guys, Danny, Chris, everybody, Solana, battered herons, battered.
Yeah, Solana. We can talk about that for a little bit.
No, it was a good time, and I'm happy we got to be a part of it. Daniel saying, how about the height Slish got? Honestly, didn't know he could jump that high.
Yeah.
Make the new logo out of that
Right. Yeah,
dolphin looking version of Slish in the air.
Yeah.
One more thing. I'm going to say it again on Wednesday, but we got a bunch of people still listening to us. There's been some takes throughout the season, and we got to address it. A lot of people said that Garth Lagerwey was not signing good players. Okay, and Cindy, I'm on Twitter way more than you. There was a lot of talks, really questioning because of the way the season is. Are we sure that Garth really signs good players? And you go back and you think about these games, all these must-win games, right? Gregerson gets a goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amador, what can we say about him?
Yeah.
Assist.
Assist.
Slisz,
Assist.
the guys that they're bringing in are doing things. It's taken a little bit, right? And obviously it hasn't been the best scenarios, but when it's clutch time, right? It's must-win games. These guys are the ones that are showing up and helping this team move on. So, look, I know there's been a lot of hot takes this season, a ton. Like if you had a board, we wouldn't be able to fit it on there. And by the way, there's a video on YouTube, just random thought, of all the hot takes and tweets of Miami losing to Atlanta. I'll try to find it, retweet it, but I watched it last night. Oh man, it's hilarious. And you could tell it's a lot of Ronaldo fans that are doing it, hating on Messi. But it's great. But let's everyone just needs to calm down.
Everybody knows what he's doing, Tommy.
Exactly, and that's it. And I saw that throughout the season, and we've had some people in here saying, "Are we sure this is going to work out here?" Yeah. It is working out. Trust the process. It's going to get better, right? We're going to continue to build on this. No one thought Amador was going to be a dude, and he's a dude, and we're moving.
Get more dudes.
get more Pedros and Slishes. Look, Slish, I really like Slish. I would not because I've seen a couple of people, not many, talk about how this midfield is not any better than it was last year, the year before, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but Slish, Jay. Look, for all the crap, and I know he's not a midfielder, but for all the crap that we've given to Shande and to Tristan Muyumba, they came up huge.
Absolutely.
So far in the playoffs. So you got to give credit where it's due. And look, if the energy bar for them needed to charge all season for them to come out in the playoffs and do this, I'll take it all day. Sean from Orlando, we appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
Joe Slish had some ups and downs. Absolutely.
Real quick. Sorry, real quick.
You don't do real quick. You could do medium quick if you want.
Yeah.
Medium.
Jump in.
It's a little quick. I see, we have more people on than usual on Mondays. If you haven't already, we didn't say this earlier, but if you haven't already, definitely subscribe to the channel. We do this every Monday night, 7 p.m. We have our LA United show Wednesday night, 7 p.m. as well. So definitely, if you're watching for the first time, come back for that. We're over, I think it's 1,130 subscribers, which is amazing. Thank you guys so much for that. Again, subscribe. If you're so inclined, leave a super thanks if you're watching live right now.
Super chat.
Super chat, super thanks, whatever. Yeah, leave one of those as well. appreciate. We got one from $9.99 the other day, yesterday on our takeaways video. So if you're watching, thanks so much for that. But yeah, it really helps us out. Really helps us to expand our reach, grow, and continue to serve you guys, as fans of Atlanta United and MLS. So thank you again. The ride continues.
And
win or lose.
And in addition to that, Patrick got to save up for that MLS Cup trip. Look, already looking. It's
LA
probably
flights are expensive. They're expensive.
Whatever.
Seattle.
But no, go to the website too, scarvesandspikes.com. You can actually we don't really push this much, but we probably should. You can actually go and enter your email on there, and you will get the articles delivered straight to your inbox immediately as soon as they go live. So go do that, and then also tune back in Wednesday, normal show, 7:00. You can watch Tommy shave his beard for the second time this season.
Well, we got to talk about that because no. I will live up to it. However, sticking with the hockey theme here, when you go through the playoffs, hockey players continue to grow their beards.
That's true.
So I think personally here, it's bad luck if I do this now.
Okay.
Now, if this goes a little bit farther, it's right before a wedding. I don't know if my wife's going to allow me to do that because she forgot again. Thank you. I think it was Matt that brought it up in the chat. Well, I'm during the watch along, and boy, I got a tongue lashing after that one, not the good one. And oh boy, I think we continue to grow this. I won't trim it, nothing. Let's keep it going through the playoffs, and then we will do it. Remember of the good time. And
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I can partake in the not messing with the beard.
Leave it.
We got to end the show, guys, because Daniel just dropped the most important news of the day. Everyone's going to be leaving now. The nonstop access video, which I begged them to release it this morning because I did not have any caffeine in the house, and they did not release it. They responded back. Shout out to Atlanta United, said it's coming. We're working on it. So we got to go watch this. I'm usually not on MLS Monday, so I came here because it was a special occasion. So thank you for having me, you two.
You're welcome, buddy.
Thanks for coming.
Anytime.
Hey. But
Sean,
we got to go watch this video.
Go check out the video, Sean. I would estimate probably about 750 if we're taking into account all the variables. I would say a solid 750, 500 to 750.
It's gonna be a lot.
It'll be a good turnout. I'm sure. I already had plenty of people saying, "Hey, got to go make that trip to Orlando." So, and I'll be one of them. I'll be up in the press box.
Nice.
As long as they accept me. We'll see. So anyway, yes, go check out Nonstop Access. Like, subscribe if you haven't already. Just it helps us out. We appreciate it, and we will see you guys again on Wednesday. Appreciate it.
Wait. Okay, good. I didn't know. Well, the music was different at the beginning.
It was.
So it really threw me for a loop. Usually I join in the middle of it to screw with you guys, and that music was hopping. But I'm glad we're back to the end Marvel same theme song. It's at the end of all the Marvel.
The intro's pretty fire, though. I'm not gonna lie. I do enjoy it. It's very professional.
Thank you.
Man, I'm not gonna sleep tonight after watching this video, guys.
You know you're not. It's Call of Duty time, buddy.
Oh yeah, I got that afterwards too. All right. All right. We could hit end now. Everybody's watching the video anyways right now.
Hyped up and screaming.